Good day, family. Welcome once again. This is the BigDaddy Football Corner. 18 February 2025. FNB Stadium, at exactly 7:30. It is happening. The biggest fixture in the African continent. Orlando Pirates versus Mamelodi Sundowns. A fixture that has become one of the biggest games in the Betway Premiership. It's tactically rich. It's got that high intensity, and it's also a fixture that often, is decisive in terms of where the tackling race goes. I know some people, they still argue with me when I said, 8 February 2025, Sundowns victory, that 4-1 victory, Loftus Stadium. For me, it was the shift. That's where I say Orlando Pirates lost, the league, and that's where the lock was decided. It looks like the February fixtures for Orlando Pirates, or even, of the entire league. I think the Premiership, the Betway Premiership will decide where the league is gonna go this particular February. So, this is, guys, my opposition analysis. I'm looking at Sundowns specifically in terms of where their strengths lies, in terms of where their weaknesses are, in terms of how they actually set up on all phases of the match. I normally say it's 5 phases, but football will always say there's always 4 phases, right? At the moment, if you look at Sundowns, they currently sit in second on the log, after 15 games. Orlando Pirates is 1 game ahead, but they are 6 points behind Orlando Pirates, and it's a game that I say Orlando Pirates cannot afford to lose. I think for me, the worst acceptable results, for this game, or acceptable outcome is definitely, a draw for Orlando Pirates. But let's look at, the quantitative data, and then we will then later on go and look at the qualitative data, because once the two align in a mix, they tell that exact story of what you are trying to say or what you are trying to see in terms of this particular team, which is Mamelodi Sundowns. Let's look at the numbers, and let's look what the numbers are telling us. Sundowns has scored 24 goals in 15 games. That's 1.6 goals per match. That says to you, in all likelihood, Sundowns is going to score, a goal against Orlando Pirates. They have conceded 7 goals, and that means they are conceding 0.47 goals per match. That says to me they are very stingy, But Orlando Pirates are more stingier, if there's anything like that, because in 16 games they've only conceded 5. So you got teams that are scoring a lot of goals, playing against each other. You also, have the same teams are conceding less in the league, which makes this fixture very, very interesting. Buffets. If you look at the head-to-head, in the PSL, 31 matches that have been played, Sundowns has won most of those matches, which is 15. Pirates has won 8, and there have been 8 draws, in this instance. If you look at the last 5 meetings between the two teams, Sundowns have won 2, Pirates have won 1, and there have been 2 draws coming into this particular match. So it will be very, very interesting, how this particular game pans out. If you look at Sundowns, they've won 9 of their games. In those 15 games they have played, they've drawn 5, and they've only lost once. And the last defeat, in the league, it was on the 24th of September, 2025, that 1-0 victory versus Golden Arrows away. And again, this time around, they're also playing away. Their top goal scorer at the moment is Reyners, who at the moment is not even enjoying, not enjoying game time. Has got 6 goals. But what's very interesting about them is the players that has, the most accurate passes per match. Cupido is up there. Mukwena is up there. Allende is up there. Modiba is up there. Now, which gets interesting. Already it says to me, those are the 4 players that if they come, or they play in this fixture, when the team has the ball, you need to start looking at them, because they are the ones that makes the team, actually play. But let's go on and look furthermore, and I'm saying when you're analyzing a Sundowns, in my own view, you don't analyze it like you analyze another team, because They've got a lot of a rich squad. I think for me, if you want to analyze Sundowns, you need to analyze the profile of each and every player that they have their team, because the profile will give you the strengths, the profile of the players will give you the weaknesses, which means you're only going to know how Sundowns, in a sense, the exact weaknesses and strength once you see the lineup, because you have analyzed the profile. Then you will understand what they're trying to do into this game. So I went on, I watched that MC Alger match, the entire first half. Then I watched the entire highlights, extended highlights of the entire game. And in that game, when I watched it, against MC Alger, it became clear for me that Attack and Sundowns has become more complete. And I'm going to explain why I'm saying that. We all know how Sundowns play. They use, those patient, build up, using the central corridors, and they are always using, that M shape when they are building up, with the goalkeeper joining, center backs, stretch wide, your left back and right back out wide. But mostly you will have Umodiba stretch more wider, because Sundowns also, just like Orlando Pirates, they always want to play out using one side, because they always play diagonals to the other side, or even some passes, most of their passes will always come out on the left-hand side, because Umodiba is incredible when he's on the ball, And when they play through the middle, that once you have Nuno Santos, once you have Marcelo Allende, once you have Botebo Khomkwena, once you have Bo Jaden Adams, once you have Bo Arthur Sales, that Sundowns mostly, when they have those players in the field of play, they always attack using the central corridors, meaning they are not using the outer lanes or the outer corridors, because the field is stretched. The field has 5 horizontal zones. They are not using the outer zones. They use the middle zone. But against MC Alger, which was very, very, very interesting for me, was that they used Umodiba on the left hand side, and then on the right hand side they used Murena. And once they have those players, you must know that Sundowns already, they are stretching the field, because those are your typical wingers, and they're using wing play. And for me, that is very, very, very interesting. And it's an element that Sundowns as this season is brought into their team. If you look at their build-up phase, Sundowns will always remain dominant, patient with their build-up, with Williams, coming up and joining the center backs, and forming the three, in that build-up. And then they have Umkwena, who's normally the one that's going to come and collect, on this instance. They allow Ronnie Williams as the one who's a very good passer of the ball. But what was interesting for me against MC Alger is MC Alger opted for something that I don't think most people or even coaches notice, or let me say, they planned for before, where they will leave Uronwen to have the ball and they don't press him. If you pressing Uronwen is you let him make the first pass, and then you use your shadow, to block the lane, Uguti doesn't come back to him, but you let him have the ball. And once you do that, it frustrates him when he's not being pressed, because he's used to people pressing him and wanting to take the ball away from him. So it'll be very interesting me to see how Orlando Pirates come into this game, because MC Alger was literally, using a high press -1. A high press -1, remember, it's always a 11v10 when the goalkeeper, adds into the play. But if you've got a man-to-man, in the entire field, it means the 10 players that are on the field, they all have 10 players that are marked. Then you only got one, which is the goalkeeper free. Then that's when it becomes a -1. So for me, I think that, I took it from the MC Alger. I was like, this is very interesting for me. So it will be interesting to see how Orlando Pirates will intend to press. But I think Makhubu is likely to start this particular game, because he's the best presser, of the particular team, your Orlando Pirates. Undamane, for me, him coming into Mamelodi Sundowns, he has brought a different dimension into Orlando in that Mamelodi Sundowns. I think he brought the height, he brought the physique, he's brought in, the aggression, at the back where it becomes now all of a suddenly when you cross the ball, he's always winning those aerial balls. He's also very good in terms of playing those diagonals. I said to you, watch the repeated passes that will always come from Mundamane, either to the right-hand side up there, depending on who's playing on the right-hand side or in the left-hand side, on Modiba's side. But what was also interesting to notice was Sundowns have stretched the space between their center backs. It has split, it's a little bit wider, and it's leaving a gap, in the center, which means when Orlando Pirates win the ball, they need to have a player that will always try and ensure that he plays into that central area while the center backs are trying to close, right? The other thing as well that I noticed was the Sundowns now also, just like Orlando Pirates, they build up with the lopsided, during their progression, where Modiba will move more wider. He won't be involved into the play. He will be more wide there, closer to the line, just to ensure that when they get the ball, they play the diagonal quickly into Modiba, and he can then, attack into the final third. There's always repeated passes, long passes that goes from Williams to Modiba. The fullbacks, Umotao, when you give him the ball, he's not really a major threat, especially, during the build-up phase. So for me, the pressing in Orlando Pirates should always to be allow the pass to go to Umotao and leave Umotao during the build-up phase, because what he's going to do, he's going to look, rotate and take it back to Williams. And that's what you need to do. You just need to ensure that you win the ball, go Modiba, because he's not, on Motao's side, because he's not a major threat. Modiba, we all know he struggles to defend the space behind him. He goes wide, you play the ball behind him. And then that's where, for me, the speed of Morena is going to be very, very, Moremi, it's going to be very, very important for Orlando Pirates. And I think this time around, it will make sense for him to play on Madiba's side, to actually exploit that space that's going to play. But you must know that if they put Divine Lunga, he's more defensive. It will be the same as in the right-hand side, Gumota, where you're going to give him the ball, because it's not going to give you much threat. But if you look at the attacking structure, yes, Sundowns, it has evolved for me, and I think it has become a little bit more complete, because now they can use wing play, now they can cross the ball, now they can play my diagonals, now they can play, my inside diagonals as well, long balls to Umuniz, they are the Ulopez, they are striker up front, and they can react on the second phase, they also do half space crosses as well, which I called my inside diagonals. Also, when they are doing the crosses or they are out wide, they also now using, especially Usales, he exploits, the space in between the lines. They cut back into the red zone and they become very, very dangerous. The other way as well, Sundowns scores, guys, they score from rebounds. They take a lot of shots. Mkwena, you shouldn't give him space. We all know that. He's going to punish you. Sales is also another one that's going to punish you with long shots. Umotiba is also another one that's going to punish you. And when that shots come to Usipo Shaine, he cannot afford to parry those shots back into play, because whenever he does those saves, it must be pushed wide and out of danger, because once you put it, it becomes a rebound. Sundowns is dangerous scoring from rebound. I think even last season against him, Ushaine, they scored from a rebound. And even now, the new player, their striker that they have, also is scoring, a lot of goals from rebounds, Also, as I said, Asta Sales is extremely dangerous when he receives in between the lines, either in the half space or in the central channel. He's very, very dangerous, and he's got a left foot, a very good left foot to take shots into this into those areas. So Orlando Pirates must afford such situations, in this instance. Then on corner kicks, I think Sundowns, for me, in the entire PSL, they are one of the best teams defending corner kicks, attacking corner kicks. When they defend with a 3-5-2 shape, where you will have three players, more on the side or on the near post, and then you have got five players that are guarding, the 12-feet area, and then you've got two players that are in front inside the box. Where Sundowns is vulnerable into that for me is when you do cutbacks into the D line. That is where the space exists, and that's where Cameron scored the goal. Into that. So you need that element of surprise when you're playing against Sundowns, especially when you're attacking corner kicks. But the PT is Orlando Pirates also is not a very very good team. When it comes to corner kicks in terms of them attacking corner kicks. So we need that surprise element that's gonna catch Sundowns, sleeping. On their attacking corner kicks, they are very, very aggressive. Umkwena is the one that normally takes those corner kicks. And if you look at how he takes the corner kicks, he takes them in a way that, it puts them in between the defenders and Shahine. And you always want to catch Shahine between whether he comes out or he stays in the line. They also have another variation where they use short corner kicks and they use Umkoena, outside the D-line to take shots. That's how they scored against Al Hilal. Also, they are high press. Hey guys, Sundowns have mastered how to aggressively press using that V shape. Where you've got two players behind them, then you've got another one, and they press you aggressively up front. And Orlando Pirates, especially the center pairing, CBC, no Siema, I think it will be very, very vulnerable in terms of playing out from the back. For me, this game screams for Ichabatsane, but the problem is he hasn't played such big games. You put him into that game and he makes one mistake, and all of a sudden, everybody's on top of him. So, but that's what means, playing for Orlando Pirates. They are also very good in terms of forcing. When you play the ball into the fullbacks, they use the touchline as a defense, or also as a pressing or as an extra player to press, and then they aggressively guide you and take the ball into that space, and then they attack. They are very, very, very good in terms of how they've got such intense counter pressing. I've seen them scoring, a goal from a counter press. When you play through the middle, they counter press, they take the ball, they attack, they get into the final third. Then there are key vulnerabilities for me. There are two. Number one is that high line that they play. They push it very high. That offside trap. Guys, Orlando Pirates players need to time their runs. Bobo Hoto, if he's going to play, he needs to time his runs in terms of ensuring that they bend their runs and they ensure that they attack the space behind, because that's where Sundowns is vulnerable. And that's where also Al Hilal scored, from such scenarios, by just exploiting that high line, that offside trap. If you've got a well-timed run, a well-timed pass, you can, and the third man runs, you can beat that high line in Sundowns. And there's a goal that is smelling from such a situation, especially for Bomoremi and Apolis, who are very quick into that. So Orlando Pirates must use those weapons, Bohoto, Bomoremi, that pace to get behind the defensive line and force them, to drop that line. And if they don't, just make sure you are clever with your runs, not what we have seen before with Orlando Pirates. Also, on crosses, when you get crosses, whether they're near in the far post, they touch into the near, into the far post, they are very vulnerable in those situations. Williams is always beaten, with those with such signals. My friends, if there's anything I've missed, please let me know. Let's discuss about it. Like, share, and comment on this video. Danko, mapagania.